Survival is a mental exercise. After the excitement of the incident and the rush of adrenaline is settled, it takes great mental resolve to carry on. What keeps us going is the basic instinct, which is best referred to as the will to live. This is the firm foundation on which we build all our training on and try to nourish and increase. It's easy to see how physically fit we are, but very difficult to know how mentally fit we are. This basic instinct is getting weaker as we get more civilized, so it's important to practice our skills and be prepared for any eventuality. Some people have stronger will than others, but we can all improve. You can have all the knowledge and kit in the world, but without the will to live, you can still perish.
Let me ask you a question. If you were, say, stranded alone on a deserted island, unsure if and when you'd be rescued, what would mentally keep you going? What would nurture your will to live? Let me know in the comments. And that quote I just read is from this book, the SAS Survival Handbook, written by John Lofty Wiseman. And this was given to me when I was 10 years old. And it was my absolute Bible growing up. I took it everywhere with me. And it was one of my foundational influences which sparked my lifelong interest in bushcraft and wilderness survival skills. And I have this really clear memory of when I was a child. I was sitting in the woods in my den made out of sticks. And I opened this page to this pyramid diagram, which Wiseman calls the essential pyramid of learning for the survivor. And even though I was just a child, this sentence has always stuck with me. The basic instinct is getting weaker as we get more civilized. Now, of course, I was 10 years old. I couldn't quite understand the profundity of that sentence. And I was mainly interested in all the cool shelters, spears, bows and arrows, and cool traps this book shows you how to make. But now I'm a 31-year-old child. I feel a calling to revisit this quote and delve into what Wiseman actually means about the basic instinct and the will to live. Look at how and if at all civilization is making it weaker, and if it is, what can we do about it? So join me in this journey as we explore the basic instinct. All you'll need is a journal, a rucksack, and of course, a good stick. Now, I believe the will to live is an important and relevant topic for a few reasons. First of all, it's January. January. And in Scotland that means it's cold, it's dark, I've already broken my New Year's resolutions, and Christmas has left me with nothing but a hangover and a drained bank account. So I'll admit, my will always feels a bit weaker this time of year. Secondly, in most bushcraft and survival skills, they might give the will to live lip service, but they rarely talk about it as something that you can teach or train. And even Wiseman, after saying it's the most important thing, doesn't actually mention it again, and instead goes on to talk about knowledge and kit. These days with the internet, we have unlimited access to knowledge and equipment, and to make it easy for you, I've even made a free survival checklist that you can download off my website right now to get you started. But the will to live? You can't really Google that. You certainly can't buy it. Now, what I love so much about wilderness survival skills is how it forces you to simplify life right down to its absolute basics, giving you strong principles in resilience from which you can build everything else in life from. Now, the will to live and the basic instinct is also relevant to the everyday. For in the words of Anton Chekhov, any fool can cope with a crisis. The difficult thing is to cope with everyday life. When I was 10 years old, I probably thought that any problem could be solved with a good survival kit. But really, the challenges that I feel and see in the everyday are more things to do with mental health, depression, anxiety, suicide, and addiction. Really, the challenges of the mind and the spirit. So, in this video, I will explore the basic instinct and the will to live by asking 3 questions. 1. What does Wiseman mean when he says the basic instinct and the will to live? And I'll give some real-life examples. 2. Is civilization making the basic instinct weaker, and if so, how? And finally, 3, can we nourish and improve our basic instinct in the everyday? And I'll suggest 3 methods that help me. Do you want to know the secret of how to nurture the basic instinct? Don't wear any underwear. Let that breeze kiss the giblet. What does Wiseman actually mean when he says the will to live or the basic instinct? Well, I read a bit of the quote in the intro, but let me read the full quote here. The will to live means never giving in, regardless of the situation. It's very reassuring to know that there is nothing on this earth that we cannot deal with, and there is no place on earth we cannot survive. As long as we follow the basic principles, prepare ourselves and apply this will to live, we will come through. Some people have a stronger will than others, but we can all improve. Some people turn to religion in times of stress. Others think of loved ones. Fear of failure or letting down comrades all help to strengthen our will to live. Reading of past exploits of survival will also help. You can have all the knowledge and kit in the world, but without the will to live, you can still perish. Now, the basic instinct, it's kind of a difficult thing to describe, but then we also all know what it is. In fact, most movies and every mythology story is all about celebrating individuals' will to live, their instinct, that drive that allows them to overcome obstacles. Inspiring survival stories could be things like Aaron Ralston in 2003. He got his arm trapped in a boulder and was stuck there for 5 days until he finally amputated his own arm off with a blunt penknife. Also in 1971, Julianne Kopict was only 17 years old when her family's plane crashed in the Amazon jungle. She was the only survivor, and she spent 11 days by herself, and she managed to get her way out of it. So as humans, we're always celebrating individuals with this strong basic instinct, and these stories have inspired movies, being the 127 Hours and Miracles Still Happen. Now, the stories that have been inspiring my basic instinct over the last few years is really reading about stories about the 17th century Highlanders. And you can say all my different historical expeditions and survival challenges I've been doing is kind of a way for me to shake off that modern laziness and rekindle that spark in me. And because of that, I've kind of been referring to the basic instinct as the Highland spirit. And by that, I don't mean whiskey. That's not a sustainable way to nurture the will. No, the Highland spirit to me is essentially that, the basic instinct. And it's not even limited to the culture of Scotland in that time period. It can really be found in loads of cultures all around the world and ages, or kind of exist on the edge of civilization, existing in harsh environments. So hopefully we have a better understanding of what the basic instinct is. Now on to the second question, but for that, I think I need to go outside. On to the second question. Is civilization weakening the basic instinct? And if so, how? Well, the definition of civilization, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a state of human society that's very developed and organised. Similar words being progress and advanced. So it's pretty vague, and Wiseman doesn't actually give us an opinion on why he thinks civilization is weakening the basic instinct. So since we don't have a quote to work off, what I thought I'd do is I'll just list a bunch of things that weaken my will, and I'll list a bunch of things that strengthen my will. You can do the same, and then we can discuss to see whether civilization can be blamed for these or not. So first of all, here's a list of things off the top of my head that I feel weaken my will. Too much comfort for too long. Lack of physical activity. Too much short-term gratification, both physical and mentally consumed dopamine hits. Loneliness. Unwholesome dysfunctional relationships. Too much scrolling in social media. Watching the news. Never watch the news, it's bad for you. Lack of time in nature. Lack of sunlight. Lack of purpose or spiritual meaning, lack of sleep, because fatigue makes cowards of us all. Now, a list of things that I feel strengthen my will. Physical activity, time in nature, wholesome, loving, meaningful relationships, music, adventure, a sense of humour and laughter, curiosity, creativity, wholesome discipline, not being a tyrant to yourself, but also not allowing yourself to take the easy way all the time, quality sleep, alignment with a purpose and spiritual meaning, and of course, a good stick. Let me know in the comments what sort of things strengthen and weaken your basic instinct. So looking at that list, how much can we blame on civilization? Well, some of it yes, and some of it no, not necessarily. A lot of it is just being human. Now bear in mind, this book was written in 2003, so before the advent of the smartphone and social media, so Wise Man's Civilization was a bit different to ours. Now looking at my list, I think the things that can be blamed on civilization is technology over-harvesting my attention, reaching in and playing with the puppet strings of our primal brains, something I've mentioned many times in my past videos. Now of course the internet is amazing, a wealth of knowledge and opportunity, but with a wealth of knowledge comes a poverty of attention. And the basic law of the internet is that if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. Your attention is the product. And we're all playing that part of the game. And it's becoming increasingly invasive. And I'll be honest, my will to carry on making YouTube videos has weakened the last couple of years because it's becoming an increasingly difficult place for both creators and viewers. And it's why I've stepped away from sponsors, because I didn't want to interrupt their message, and it's why I've made this online survival school to try forge this distraction-free space on the internet. And for the last 3 years I've been obsessed about creating a principle-based learning system on how we can use wilderness survival skills to build resilience, first in the individual, then on the community and collective level. Then with this new understanding on how nature supports us, we can build resilience on the ecosystem environmental level, and how that all feeds into each other in a beautiful little cycle. And I teach and explore all this through a learning map called the Tree of Needs. Now if you want to find out more, you can check out my online survival school, Resilient Roots, where we can all nurture each other's journeys in nourishing this basic instinct, and we can remember how to be human again. I think the parts of civilization that bring law, order, peace and prosperity should never be thrown out of blindness, because you never know what you got till it's gone. So I think that we can keep the good parts of civilization and still nurture this highland spirit, this basic instinct. And we do this by keeping one foot on the carpet and the other foot in the dirt. So with that said, let's get on to the next question. People often ask me how I turned out so strange compared to my peers. So here's a bit of context. When I was growing up, I didn't really watch much TV. In fact, I've never actually owned a television my entire adult life. Unlike all my friends, I didn't have or play any computer games my entire childhood, so I all felt a bit left out in that. So I spent most of my time having to entertain myself in the woods, building dens, making bows and arrows, and lighting fires, stuff like that. Now with a smartphone, I didn't actually own a smartphone until about 6 years ago, when I started making a living from YouTube. Now in some ways, this has given me a bit of an advantage, especially compared to what I do now. But despite all my talk about resilience, I'll admit, I don't really feel that resilient to the modern world a lot of the time. So I often feel like an old soul in the millennial generation, and often quite out of place in this modern world. So it's been nice to meet some kindred spirits on the Resilient Roots community. Now, the last question, how can we nurture the basic instinct in the modern world? Well, here are 3 things that I found incredibly helpful. Let me know in the comments what you do. Let's get into them. First one, focus and reflect. Before you let your attention become someone else's product, give it to yourself. Spend some time in the mornings and evenings meditating, pondering, and reflecting. Journaling has been one of the best things I've ever done, and I think it's so important. I've made a free online course called 4 Days to Focus, where I teach you exactly how I do my method. I'll put a link in the description. It's about just taking a pause, writing down your purpose, write down your will to live, write down the things that nourish your basic instinct. This method is ultimately the principle of detachment. It's about, before getting caught up in the tangle and noise, take a breath, take a step back, and take note. 2, lean into discomfort. The area of growth and learning is always found between the balance of the comfort zone and the panic zone. We nurture the basic instinct by leaning into the discomfort, by surfing that wave of chaos, but also not doing anything too stupid or dangerous. Our dopamine reward system in our brains requires effort for us to feel pleasure. So choose the effort. It's where you choose to strip off that cozy blanket of self-pity and let the elements give you a much needed slap in the face. It's allowing nature to initiate you and remind you of the ancient animal within. This is the principle of discipline, becoming a disciple of Mother Nature and her many teachings. 3. Nourish the spirit. This is ultimately nourishing all the things that increase your will, which hopefully now you have a list of. It's doing all the things that wakens that fire of enthusiasm within you. It's made up of all the little decisions we make, from the food we eat to the people we hang out with. It's about awakening that inner child full of wonder within you and leading it by the hand by your newly initiated nurturing adult. After you've focused on your path and you've leant into discomfort, the only thing left to do is have fun. This is the principle of applying play to all things. So I'm feeling inspired to make a series of YouTube videos continuing to explore this survivor's pyramid. Not only how we can nourish the will to live, but how we can acquire the survival knowledge, as well as decent kits. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Once again, if you want to continue the conversation in depth and continue learning in a distraction-free space, then come join me over in the Resilient Roots Survival School. It'll be great to have you. Look forward to seeing the discussion in the comments below. And until then, nurture the basic instinct. Catch you later.